Hey, I'm Ton Vin, host of Seattle Eats, a food podcast from the Seattle Times and KUOW. Everyone loves a taco truck, but the hottest truck in town right now is serving up bulgogi pork instead of al pastor. On the latest episode of Seattle Eats, we taste test Korean tacos and debate the best places to get Korean food in the region. Listen to Seattle Eats on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Classic frenemies, America and China, are trying to work things out. Again. The global economy's favorite situationship said this week it wants to get serious.
You're with a guy who's not going to stop planning his future with you.
The extreme tariffs that the U.S. and China have put on each other have already had a negative effect on trade.
We are so over.
Now they're scaling those taxes back, at least for 3 months.
So is trade back on, or has the damage already been done? A lot of people are looking to the Port of Seattle for clues.
So I hopped on the ferry and I went across the water, and I can tell you definitively now, the port is super empty.
Okay, so if anyone doesn't know that, Seattle Port is empty. You heard me?
It's not quite that simple. The ports haven't been knocked out by the trade war, but they definitely have whiplash.
Port of Seattle is one of the most trade-dependent states in the nation, and we are the closest to China. So our impacts can be very significant.
I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
And I'm Joshua McNichols. This is Booming, a podcast about the economic forces shaping our lives here in the Pacific Northwest.
Today, we visit the gateway to the Pacific to find out what the port really tells us about the chaotic state of international trade. Now that China and the U.S. are trying to work things out, will trade bounce back?
We were on a break!
That's coming up.
Vicky boy, working today? How's a lasher for Big Roy's crew? Atta boy. Make the family proud. First day they give me in 2 weeks.
So, Monica, things are really uncertain right now. Tariff news is changing every day. People are anxious about the economy, and it's led to this obsession with the port. It feels like that's going to be the place where we'll see the first signs of things either going off the rails or getting back to normal.
Yeah, all of a sudden, it feels like all eyes are on the port, this thing that we don't normally pay that much attention to. I'm even getting texts from my friends saying, like, is the port dead? Or is the port really empty?
So you actually went down to the port to investigate. What did you find?
Well, it wasn't a ghost town, like some of the rumors that you might have seen on social media. So I went down there, put on the neon safety vest, drove right onto the terminal with a terminal operator and some folks who work at the port. And there were containers stacked up. There was a ship there. And the terminal operator said it was kind of business as usual.
Well, that's surprising.
It wasn't what I expected based on what I'd been seeing online. But what I learned is that big changes at the policy level, like tariffs, take at least a few weeks to show up at the port. And that lag time is important because it helps us make sense of this latest twist in the trade war story. So, the U.S. just announced it's going to cut tariffs on Chinese imports down from 145% to 30% for the next 3 months, while the two countries try to come up with a deal. I visited the port before that happened, and I talked to Fred Felleman. He's a Seattle Port Commissioner. If the tariffs were lifted tomorrow, would we still expect a decline in containers moving through the port for some time?
Yes, we said, we at least a month, but really the question is, the sooner we can catch it, the sooner the supply chains won't change. So really, the speed is critical in terms of our speed of recovery.
So, in other words, it's going to take a little while for the port to catch up with this new reality.
Yeah, exactly. Until now, they were still dealing with a backlog of containers brought in before the tariffs took effect. And we were just starting to see the slowdown in cargo from tariffs that were put in place about a month ago. This week, our harbor is going to see 3 blank sailings. That's when a container ship decides to skip our ports because it doesn't have enough cargo to make it worth the cost of docking. And Sam Cho, another port commissioner for Seattle, said that is not normal.
No blank sailings is standard, and so blank sailings are never a good thing.
Sam said there's also a shipping line that usually comes to our port every week that just announced it's going to switch to every other week.
Okay, so we had this threat of really high tariffs. A bunch of stuff came into the country to try to avoid those taxes, and that's the buildup of containers that you saw at the port. And then this week, things are starting to slow down, which is the fallout from those tariffs starting to take effect. And now things are changing again.
They are, but like we said earlier, there's a lag time. So the situation right now is still that slowdown. And we've heard a lot about how that's going to affect us as consumers, higher prices, fewer things that we're used to seeing on the shelves. But when I talked to Fred, he said it also could have a big impact on jobs in our community.
We have something like 2,000 longshoremen that work both in Seattle and Tacoma. And then there's many more that are just the casual operators. We have 4,000 truck drivers between the two terminals. You know, we have the warehousing, we have the trains, we have all this ecosystem that makes the port run. And these jobs are all at stake.
He also said that those dock workers get paid per container that they unload. So when things slow down, they feel it in their paycheck right away.
Right. I've been talking to truckers, and I've heard the same thing from them. I talked to some of them down at Spirit Transport. It's this trucking operation in Kent, and they have about 24 drivers. These are the guys that carry containers between the port and local distribution centers. From there, trucks and trains take those containers all over the country. And actually, I didn't know this, but they call containers cans.
I actually did know that because of The Wire, which you may have heard a little bit of earlier in the show.
Yeah.
So this is our messy dispatch office.
Yeah, you can take that chassis back to MLK, please. Back to MLK. And you will be the last person. Can you please lock the gate?
Yeah, I will close the gate.
When I stopped by one afternoon at about 2:30, their workday had already fizzled out. There were 5 guys sitting there monitoring cameras showing the empty port lanes, trying to keep busy on their computers, and they were just hoping that the phone would ring, because that would mean more work. So I'm talking to the owner, and then finally a call interrupts us.
And so we weren't able to replace that business. Mm-hmm.
Spirit Transport, this is James. Yes, this is James. Is there any drayage needs I can help you with? Not a business call.
We got spammed.
Yep.
Man, there is nothing worse than waiting by the phone, dying to hear from someone, and then it being a spammer. It reminds me of my 20s.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the people I spoke to is Dennis Houghton, and he's the head dispatcher. He told me that on a good day, his drivers make several round trips. But tomorrow, he doesn't have enough jobs for them.
So some drivers will not be working tomorrow.
Yeah.
For instance, today, there's my list of drivers. See all the offs. I had 10 drivers working out of the 23 possible. So 13 drivers, no work.
Wow. Okay.
Today alone.
How much of that can we attribute to tariffs, if any?
Answer honestly.
It's affected us. I can't say it's hit us. It's going to hit us worse, I think, in the future. It's starting, though. It is starting.
It's hard to plan. Up until now, truckers have been working less, and that means less income. Yet they still have the same costs, whether they're working or not. I talked to this one driver named Aparm Singh, and he told me he's been doing his own repairs to try to save money, and he's also planning to lower his insurance. So then if you get in an accident and your truck is totaled, you only get some of the value of your truck back.
Well, that's a risk. What can you do? Otherwise, I don't have money for the pay the insurance and sit home, you know.
That sounds like a pretty precarious situation.
It is. And it's also disruptive in other ways. Like another driver, Gagandeep Sandhu, he doesn't know if there's still going to be enough cargo for him to find local work. And if not, he'll have to switch to trucking across the country, which takes him away from his family.
So in Indian culture, we are like our big families, right? So I actually have my 3 sister-in-laws wedding this year. like one next month and then following that.
Do you worry about missing those weddings?
Yeah, definitely.
They're trying to make plans for a future that's just anybody's guess at this point. They're talking about missing family weddings. They're changing their insurance policies. And if they're taking those steps, that's a sign of things to come that could affect every single one of us.
Yeah, and I think probably all of us have the same question, which is now that these tariffs have at least temporarily been paused, is trade going to rebound? I asked Sam Cho, the Seattle Port Commissioner, that, and he's not so sure.
One day there's a pause, one day there's tariffs, one day there's a pause. And so just the general uncertainty that has been injected in the markets because of the lack of consistency and continuity in the policies. I don't know if you'll see like a huge spike in trade volume because the tariffs disappear.
Ports, like businesses, need a level of certainty to make plans that are weeks or months out. Logistics is really complicated and expensive, and you need to know what the costs are going to be to plan. Tariffs aren't just this switch that you can flip to turn global trade back on.
Yeah, imagine if you had like a light switch in your house, and when you flipped it, it took 2 months for the light to come on.
I would probably just leave it on all the time.
Yeah. Well, given how uncertain it is, do you have any prediction for where things are going to go?
No. I mean, I think it's equally plausible that you could see a huge surge in demand from people who think, okay, I've got 90 days to ship everything that I need into the country, and that could cause the cost of shipping things to go up. But I also think there could just be total paralysis, right? Who knows what this is going to be tomorrow or next week, and how do you make decisions in that environment? I know personally, I don't have enough information to know when is the right time to buy my kids Christmas presents, let alone a new car, which we were thinking about this year. I'm just going to wait and see. We don't have an end game today, but instead we have a request. We're working on an episode about how much money you need to live comfortably in Seattle, and we want to hear from you. What annual income would it take for you and your dependents to live comfortably here? We know comfortably means different things to different people. Maybe for you, it's paying all your bills, saving a little, going on one vacation per year. I think that's probably true for me, but I'd maybe also add a little space for my kids to play in a garden.
Yeah, I just want to be able to, help my kids go to college and have enough money to retire without worrying that like big medical costs will drain that money. And I want to be able to buy some nice local tomatoes for tomato salad every once in a while.
I think that is a very modest and lovely goal. So here's our ask. Think about what it means for you and your family to be comfortable, and then think about how much money that would take living in this city. Leave us a voicemail with your answer at 206-221-7158. One more time, that's 206-221-7158. Include your name and your neighborhood, and you might show up in a future episode.
That's it for Booming. Thank you so much for listening.
If you have a question about the economy that you want us to answer, email us at booming@kuow.org.
Also, special thanks to those of you who are donating to the show. We couldn't do it without you. And if you want to donate, go to kuow.org/booming. And thanks.
Our producers are Lucy Suchek and Alec Cowan. Our editor is Carol Smith. I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
I'm Joshua McNichols.
And we'll see you next time.
On the latest Sound Politics, Democratic Representative Emily Randall joins us. It's her first year in Congress. We're talking tariffs, the UW protests and suspensions, Israel's war in Gaza, how Democrats are pushing back on President Trump, and why she visited an ICE detention facility in Tacoma. That's all coming up this week on Sound Politics. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.